Hey everyone, this is Andy Baker, owner of Kingwood Strength and Conditioning, and I thought I'd post a short video here real quick in response to a email that I just received in my inbox from a parent of some swimmers. And I, as many of you know, I've spent a lot of time working throughout my career with high school, collegiate, and even some master's level swimmers. It's a sport that I really don't have any direct experience with myself. My body type is about the furthest thing from what a successful swimmer would be. Any of you who know me know I'm about 5'4", 230 pounds, so don't move too swiftly through the water. Even in my former life, in my military career, doing our swim qual test was one of the times of the year that I despise the most. But weird things fall into your lap in this profession, and one of the things that's fallen into my lap is that probably more than any other sport that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of sports: football, track and field, soccer, baseball, MMA, all these various sports. Swimming is probably the sport that I've worked with more than any, and like I said, because I didn't really have any direct experience with it, I've learned a lot about the strength and conditioning training of swimmers. So anyway, I get emails about this from time to time with people. I've always got a handful of swimmers as personal training clients that I'm working with. So the question was specifically today from a parent asking, he's familiar with the starting strength program, and kind of my basic approach to barbell training was, how do you apply a basic linear progression as described in starting strength? How would you apply that to a swimmer? Does anything change? And the short answer is yes. There are some things that I do differently with swimmers that I don't necessarily do with other sports, and certainly that I don't necessarily do with just a regular kind of strength athlete who doesn't have all these outside demands kind of imposing onto the strength and conditioning schedule. So one of the first things I would say when you're working with a swimmer is you have to be patient and flexible in your progression. One of the easy things about working with novices is that the progression is fairly predictable. At least it is for the first several months. You as a coach kind of know you're going to get a few weeks, a few months, usually multiple months before you start having trainees miss weights or running in any kind of stalls or snags that you have to get creative and program around. So with swimmers, though, they run into walls a lot earlier because these kids and adults, most of them, if they're competitive, they swim all year round. And generally, as a strength coach, especially if you're in private practice like I am, you're not working hand in hand with the coach at a university. You don't have any control of what goes on at those swim practices, and a lot of times it varies day to day, kind of what their swim coach is going to have them do. So, you've got your workouts planned, but they come in and they've done double the work that they normally do in a practice. Well, swimming's just one of those things that's very depleting, and if you've got 250 pounds for 3 sets of 5 program today, and you barely eked out 245 the workout before, well, you have to know as a coach that in the back of your mind, maybe this is not going to happen today. Maybe that what you had planned is just not going to be there, and trying to force it onto the athlete when they're in that super depleted state from these hard practices, you're either going to injure them, or you're just going to get them kind of in a mental, if they're a highly competitive athlete, they're going to get mentally down on themselves because they try to go up in weight, and maybe instead of getting sets of 5, they only got it for 1 or 2 kind of ugly grinding reps. So you want to as a coach prepare yourself to have to be flexible with the programming of the swimmer, and you need to prepare the swimmer also to educate them and help them understand how their swimming is going to impact their strength, and not get down on themselves and not get frustrated when they don't reach their goals in a given workout. On the other side of that same coin is that you're going to have workouts where maybe they're tapering down for a meet, or they just had a couple of easy practices for whatever reason, and they're not doing the same volume in the pool that they normally do, and they're going to come into the gym that particular day, and they're going to feel great. As a coach, I like to take advantage of that. So, maybe they've been working with 225 pounds, they're struggling to make progress off of that and up into the next weight increment on a given exercise, and they come in, they're feeling great, and as I'm watching them warm up, this is another point as a coach, watch the warm-ups, and that'll kind of tell you the story. I always have them try to warm up with the same increments, so if they're going to warm up to 225, I want to see 95, 135, 165, 185. I want to see these same increments used each time, so I get a good feel with where that trainee is at that day. Does that 185 warm-up set, does that look slow or does it look fast today? If everything's looking fast and the kid's looking good, and his form's holding together and he's got a lot of pop and the weights are rattling at the top, and you ask him, you say, hey, how was practice this morning? And he says, oh, it was a light day. Coach went kind of easy on us or whatever. Well, then you as a coach, you say, hey, we might take advantage of this today. Let's go to 225 and try it, or let's blow past it and let's put a little extra on the bar today, and let's set a new PR. Let's put on 245 today. Maybe it's there today, and let's set a new 5-rep max. It's an individual. There's no rhyme. There's no set protocol of how to do that, but you as a coach use your best judgment. If you feel like you can jump ahead and grab a PR when it's there, by all means you should take it. So you're kind of auto-regulating here, even for the novice, which would be a little bit more of an advanced technique usually. But for a swimmer, I don't want to hold back just because he's scheduled to do 225. If he's capable that day of doing 245, well then by all means I'm going to have him do it, because I don't know when he's going to be capable of doing it again. That may not, they may go right into another month of really, really hard training, and he may be coming in a depleted state every workout for the next few months. So, so that's kind of change number one of the novice program is yes, you kind of stick to the basic framework of trying to linearly progress them, but at the same time be flexible in your approach and know when to hold back and know when to jump forward. So. And it takes a little while to get good at that and develop a feel for it. Along those same lines, like I said, swimming is it's unique in its ability to really just deplete the whole body of these athletes, even these really well-conditioned athletes. And especially at the high school and a lot of times too at the collegiate level, these kids, they don't know anything about nutrition. Literally they know nothing. So they don't know that a really, really hard swim practice depletes basically all of their muscle glycogen. And they don't know that coming into a heavy workout with, completely depleted glycogen stores like that is going to have a really negative impact on them. So you want to educate them on the impact of nutrition, and talk to them about good ways to kind of to fit in the right type of nutrition between their swimming practices and between their training sessions. Talk to them about the difference between carbohydrates and fats and proteins, and fast digesting carbohydrates and slow digesting carbohydrates. I always try to get the kids, to always have a steady supply of Gatorade ready, just because it's a very fast digesting carbohydrate that they can, they can eat before a swim practice or right before a weight training session. Because some of these kids, they don't know they're eating peanut butter and stuff like that because that's what they've been told, but that's just not a really good fuel source for glycolytic activity. So just work with them and try to talk to them about the importance of post-workout nutrition, pre-workout nutrition, and get them in the habit of kind of thinking about it, because most of them don't think about it at all. So kind of help them out in that regard. Other challenges. Most of them are going to come in with their shoulders a little screwy, typically or especially the distance swimmers. So I put a huge emphasis on the press right away. It's almost like a rehabilitation and strengthening movement right from the get-go. So when I first start working with them, if their shoulders are irritated, if they're having a lot of shoulder pain, that sort of thing, then I will typically have them press every single workout until either their press stalls or their shoulders start feeling better, and then at that time I'll start working in bench pressing. But I've gone, sometimes even up to a month of having them only shoulder press to heal up their shoulders and get their shoulders strong enough to where they don't get all inflamed and tore up again. So slightly favored in lieu of overhead pressing over bench pressing at the beginning. And that's counter to most of the literature that you're going to read. You're going to read a ton of literature that's going to talk quite a bit about, not doing overhead movements for overhead athletes. I don't know where that came from, but it's just not correct. So my experience has been completely and 100% counter to that advice, and I have had nothing but positive results from a high volume of overhead pressing with swimmers, and for that matter with other quote overhead athletes, pitchers and whatever. So I've had nothing but positive results. I don't think once in all of my time of strength training with athletes, non-athletes, whoever it is, I've never had shoulder problems arise from the press. So I would use it and don't hold back on getting their press up as quickly as possible. The other thing that I usually talk to the kids about, and this kind of goes with kind of that depleting nature of swimming, but aside from just the swimming, most of these kids are going to be involved, especially at the high school level, they're going to be involved in what's called dry land training. And most of the time, dry land training, in my experience, at least locally here in Kingwood, it's just a bunch of nonsensical body weight type calisthenics. It doesn't make them stronger. It doesn't make them faster. Really doesn't do much of anything except make them sore. The only reason you need to be aware of it is because sometimes they do, like I had them one time, they did like 400 meters of lunges around the track. Like that was the day before I had a heavy squat session planned for a kid. So that's something as a strength coach you need to know, because even though you're not trying to it's just one of those things that gets in the way of what you're trying to do. So you need to account for that. If the kid did 400 meters of lunges the day before his heavy squats, then you're likely not going to set a PR. So you just kind of, I always talk to them, did you do a bunch of push-ups today? Did you do a bunch of lunges? It's going to be a lot of that kind of body weight type, conditioning type stuff done for really high reps. Again, it's one of those things that's just ingrained in the swim culture. It's, decades upon decades of not being effective, but their coach did it, and the coach before them did it, and the coach before them did it, so every coach continues to do it and not really critically evaluate the effectiveness of it. And so the cycle gets perpetuated and nobody gets stronger. So anyway, it's just something you want to talk to the kids about and kind of be aware of that as a coach. Now, as far as what can we do in the weight room, do we alter anything from the novice program that's going to help these kids, get faster and more powerful? What are the exercises that we need to focus on? Does anything change from that regard from the, the basic starting strength novice program? And really no. I stay with the 5-rep sets. We squat every session. Like I said, we usually press every session until they can't do it anymore, and then we work in the bench press. I'll deadlift every session until they can't really recover from that anymore, and then we'll alternate in deadlifts with power cleans, provided that they can do a decent clean. The only thing that I changed exercise selection wise on the novice program is I'd put a big priority on chinning strength, so chins and pull-ups. Most of the time in most novice programs we recommend that exercise comes at the end as kind of a assistance movement. The problem is any of you guys know that do a lot of barbell training, by the time you get through 2-3 barbell exercises and get to your chins, you're shot. I mean, you're just tired. Your arms and shoulders are toasted from pressing or bench pressing. Your overall body is fatigued just from doing 2 or 3 movements. Deadlifts, wear your grip out, that sort of thing. So by the time you get to your chins or your pull-ups, you're not really worth a damn. And with swimming, the lat strength is so critically important for most of the strength or most of the strokes that these kids do. I don't like to put chins and pull-ups last when the kid is tired, so I put them first. So they will generally start their workout with either chins or pull-ups, and depending on where they're at, we do them weighted or unweighted, and I vary the grip. So one workout we'll do a chin grip, palms facing you about shoulder width. Next time, palms facing away, maybe a little bit wider. And I really put a premium on getting these kids stronger with their chins and their pull-ups. And then the second exercise of the day will be their squats, gives their arms a little bit of a rest, and then they go to their bench or their shoulder press. So the question I always get about that protocol was, well, does doing chin-ups and pull-ups first, does that make them too tired to put as much weight on their press or their bench press? Short answer is probably yeah, a little bit, but I'd rather sacrifice a little bit on the press and the bench than I would on the chins and the pull-ups for a swimmer. I just think it's one of those sports, and I actually do the same thing with grapplers. When I train like an MMA competitor, or I've had a couple of jiu-jitsu guys in here that I've worked with, I actually do the same thing there too, because there's such a premium on gripping strength and kind of just the strength in the forearms and the flexors of the arms. I want them to be able to hit that exercise with as much energy and strength as possible. And it does shave off a little bit off of the bench or the press. It comes later in the session, but to me it's it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. So that's how I've always done that. And then really you're looking at it, improving their pulling power with their upper body through the water. So again, that's just the basics. We bench, we press, we chin, we pull up. That pretty much hits it. And you're looking at their kicking strength, their power that they can generate with their legs. There's your squats, and then you're looking at their explosion off of the blocks and when they do their flip turns against the wall. How do we make a kid more explosive off the blocks and more explosive with his flip turn off the wall? Well, we make their lower body stronger. So again, that's squats, it's deadlifts, it's power cleans. Stronger, more explosive lower body. They'll start covering more distance off of the blocks, and they'll start getting a little bit more power off their flip turns coming off the wall. And those are really the three areas that we look to improve: their kicking, their upper body pulling through the water, and their flip turns and their initial entry into the water off the blocks. So for the most part, the basic novice program addresses all of those areas pretty thoroughly. So as far as conditioning goes, again, most of these kids swim year-round, and so there's nothing really you can do in the weight room that's going to condition them more for swimming than swimming is. Swimming is very specific. Jogging doesn't really do it. You got to get in shape as a swimmer, you got to swim, and they spend a lot of hours in the pool. So I don't really try to condition most of them at all. It's just we add in barbell training here, and they continue to swim, and they get better. The only time that I add in like actual specific, conditioning drills for them is if they have some kind of off period. The varsity high schoolers around here swim year round. The junior varsity kids don't. They have a period of time where they're not swimming, and they may not be swimming with some of the club teams. So if they have a long period of time where they're not actually going to be in the pool, then we want to keep their conditioning up as much as possible. We don't want to let them have too big of a drop off. So because I don't have a pool at my 1,500 square foot studio, then I use typically we'll do interval training on the rowers. I think that probably of any cardio that you do is the most like swimming, and that is feedback coming from my swimmers of what do we do in here that feels the most like doing a sprint in the pool. It's very much you can call that bro science or you can call it whatever, but it's using just some very basic kind of anecdotal descriptions from the athletes to find a conditioning protocol that matches what they're going to be expected to do in practice and in competition. So most of them have told me that hard intervals on the rower makes them feel the most like they just did a sprint in the pool. So good enough for me. It uses arms, it uses legs, it uses lats. So we do a lot of rowing. I also know too that a lot of the collegiate programs out here in Texas, there's no rowing teams at the high school level in Texas, but there are at the collegiate level. And I've trained a few of the collegiate crew members or collegiate rowers from the University of Texas and University of Oklahoma, and they were all recruited from high school swim teams because the two sports have so much carryover. in the metabolic demands, and in the body types. So most of your good crew member rowers at the local universities, I say local, kind of Texas, Oklahoma area, most of them were recruited from good high-level high school swim teams. And so there's a lot of carryover between those two events. So I use that. We use sprints on the Prowler. We'll take them out back outside, and we'll do intervals on the Prowler. To me, the Prowler is the greatest piece of conditioning equipment in existence, so it has carryover, I think, for basically any sport that has a conditioning component to it. And then the other thing I've kind of experimented with, and the swimmers, and you can't always trust the athlete. That's not always the best way to evaluate your protocol, because the athletes, they don't know as much as you do. But we have used circuit training type modalities in here, and just real basic type stuff. One of the things that I'll do, I did it with a master swimmer, and he really, he's kind of self-reported back to me that he really felt like that it helped. And I trained him over a period of multiple years in multiple competitions, and we experimented with several different protocols. This was a bigger guy. He was a sprinter. He was about 215 pounds, just pure power. And we would do heavy strength training for most of his, quote, off-season. Lots of heavy sets of 5, that sort of thing. Heavy weighted chins, heavy weighted dips, a lot of things like that. And then as he got close to competition, he just had a thing where he just didn't want to go heavy to competition, near competition. And I kind of explained my reasoning of how, it's not really going to affect you too much. It's and how heavy weights affect tapering and that sort of thing. But he was just he was hell bent on, we're not going to go heavy a month out, from the meet. And so, I was okay with that. The guy was already pretty strong. He's low 400 squatter. He's not going to set any powerlifting records or anything, but pretty strong for most swimmers. Low 400 for sets of 5 on the squat, mid 300s on the bench, low 200s on the press. So pretty strong guy. And we kept those same movements in, but basically what we did was we turned the workout into a high rep, kept the movements in, but fast-paced high reps is basically what we did. And so we would do like a squat, like a set of 15 or 20, immediately rack the bar, turn around, grab the chinning bar, do like 20 chins, drop off the chin bar, walk over to the dips, do like 20 or 30 dips, and then we'd rest a couple minutes and then repeat it again. And those just wrecked him. And we did that for about a month leading up into the competition, and he really felt like it helped. And so, anyway, I got to go. Got a client coming in here in just a minute, so hope that helped. And write me an email at kingwoodstrength@gmail.com if you have any questions, and I'll maybe put up another log. All right, thanks.